Hey everybody, this is Chris with Overclockers Club. I've got a cool new switch here from TrendNET. This is the TPE-TG51g 5-port Gigabit PoE Plus switch. I'm going to get the plastic off here because there's too much glare, but then we'll take a quick look at the box. Okay, so I got the plastic off, but there's still quite a bit of gloss on this, so I'll try to hold the camera so I don't get too much reflection. Actually, that's not too bad right there. Okay, so Gigabit PoE ports, 60-watt PoE budget. We'll talk about that a little later here. Long range PoE Plus and compact design, and it is very small. Okay, looking at the bottom of the box, shows that they do have other networking solutions. I can say I do have one of their 10 gigabit network adapter cards there. It works quite well. I reviewed that and I'll post a link if you're interested in that. What else is going on? Okay. All right, we've got 4 gigabit PoE Plus ports, 1 regular gigabit port, a 60-watt PoE budget, extend PoE Plus signal up to 200 meters, which is 656 feet at 10 megabits a second. I can tell you I do not have an Ethernet cable that long, so I'm not really going to be able to verify that. Dip switches. Dip switch supports Vlan port, I think that means isolation, and QoS, which is quality of service. 10 gigabits per second switching capacity. Compact metal switch. I've seen them actually have plastic cases, so this one is metal. Wall mountable design, so in the box you get the switch, installation guide, little power brick, and of course a power cord. And looking at the back of the box, we have basically what is described here in English. It's also in multiple languages over here on the right. So this is showing you can have your switch here in the house and you run your Ethernet cable through the house over here to your device. This is a camera in this particular case, and you use your power over Ethernet. And the beauty of that is I only have to run one cable, so your Ethernet cable can carry data and power to your device. So down here at the bottom right, it says you've got a 60-watt PoE power budget, so you can power up to 4 devices with power over Ethernet, and you've got 60 watts basically to spread amongst those devices. So I'll go into more detail about what that means here a little later. So long range PoE Plus switch. So you've got dip switches here on the side, and again we'll see that when we get out of the box right there. They're red. But they enable the, let's see, you enable the dip switches to extend the PoE Plus signal up to 200 meters, which is 656 feet at 10 megabits a second. So we'll see if that's just a single device or multiple devices. I'll have to see what that applies to. And then Gigabit Ethernet 5 gigabit ports provide 10 gigabits a second switching capacity to support edge network installation, which we've sort of talked about on several places on the box already. So I think we can get it out of the box now. And there is the little safety note that's included, and wow, that print's small. Okay, so this is basically telling you make sure before you use the switch that you understand how it operates and how it functions. Here's your quick installation guide, 5-port Gigabit PoE switch. Oh, that's nice. If I can get all that in there, yeah. So this sort of gives you a very nice graphical layout showing you an example of how you would use this switch, what kind of devices you would plug into it, and your maximum length. So this is a nice little illustration. Here's how all of your dip switches behave, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail, and what your LED link indicators mean. And on the back, this is just some formalities there as far as declaration of conformity. Some exciting stuff. All right, so here's the actual switch, and it is very small. For anyone wanting to know, the base unit here, now we've got a couple key slots, so you can hang this on a wall. But overall, we'll do metric first. So we're about 75 millimeters. It's about 25 millimeters, so about an inch. And in this direction, yeah, 75. This way it's about 120. In inches, we're just under 3 inches, right at about an inch. and about 4 3/4. And inside the box, there's your power cable. Now I'll measure this too, because sometimes people want to know how long is the cable so they know if it'll reach. Oh, in the bottom here there are these little rubber feet that you can pop off and place on the bottom. There are little reliefs there for little feet. In fact, I'll just go ahead and do that right now. So these just peel off. They've got adhesive on them, and you just stick one in each corner like that. And these just help keep it from sliding around on your table or desktop, and they also keep from scratching your table or desktop. Whoop, careful. All right, so that's it, and the little feet are all on there. Here's the power brick. And again, I'll measure this cord here in a moment. For anyone who wants to know how long it is for installation. Okay, so the output here, we've got 55 volts out at 1.3 amps. So you generate, or you use 71.5 watts. That's usually fully loaded, but that's what it's capable of supplying. And looking at the switch itself in a little more detail, like I said, we got some key slots on there so you can hang this thing, you know, put a couple screws and hang this thing on a wall so it's vertical. On the back there is a little power switch, which is nice, and it is metal case all the way around, nicely ventilated on the sides, and there is no fan. A little switch like this usually doesn't need a fan. And then looking across the front, so you've got 4 PoE Ethernet ports. They're sort of highlighted here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th one is in blue. This is basically, this is not PoE, this is basically your uplink port. So this is the port that you'll plug into your router or another switch. So this is, again, like an uplink port, and then these are where all of the action is happening for the 4 devices, up to 4 devices that you can plug in. And then we look a little more closely. You've got a PoE Max. This is usually if you've overloaded it, it'll let you know. There's a little power indicator, and then we have our activity LEDs there, and you can see if you've got Gigabit or 10100 based on the color. So green is your Gigabit connection, and the 10100 is going to be more of an orange. And then PoE, if it's on, you've got a little green light there. So we'll get this plugged in and sort of see how all those function. Here's where you plug in your power, and then these are your dip switches here, and we'll play with those a little later here after we get it powered up. And I just measured the overall length of your power assembly here, and basically from where you plug this into the wall to where this plugs into the unit, it's about 111 inches. Of course, you can shorten that when you start going around corners and behind desks and things like that. But that just gives you an idea. You've got about 111 inches of straight line connectivity there. And there it is plugged in. I'll flip the switch on the back, and we have a power, let's see, power light on. And the PoE Max is not lit. Sort of looks like it is just because of the angle we're at. But if you look at it straight on, it's not lit up. Now, the other thing, keep in mind, this is an unmanaged switch. This is basically, they call these a dumb switch. So there's nothing to set up. There's nothing to log into. You basically plug it in, turn it on, and you are running. Okay, so the switch is powered up. We're going to start plugging a couple of devices in. So the first one here on the green cable, this goes over to this PoE Power over Ethernet camera from Anki. And we'll plug this one in first. The black cable here is the computer, my test system. And then the red one is the in-feed or the uplink. So this goes back to my another switch, which goes into my network. And we can see that the red one here, now this is not a PoE port, it just shows activity. Green is Gigabit. The black one here is not PoE, it is just a regular computer, and it has a Gigabit connection speed. And the green one here, you can see the right hand LED is green and it's solid, so that tells me that it's the power over Ethernet is on, it's functioning. And then the yellow one shows that we're actually connected at 10100. Now, cameras usually don't connect or they don't need to connect at high speeds, so that's not really a surprise. That's expected. And my other PoE cameras connect at those speeds too. And if we move some of these around, you'll see that the LED functions follow the devices as I move them from port to port. And this one will come back on here in a moment when it starts communicating with the network again. There we go. Takes it a moment when you first power it up. So we'll move this one over here, and we'll move this one on the end. And again, you can see how the black one goes to my computer, so we just have a single gigabit connection, and the PoE camera, again, PoE shows that it's on, the solid LED, and then the little flashing yellow one, again, 10100 on the connection speed. And this blue cable is actually coming from a PoE camera that I have outside, so we'll plug it in, and we should see the same behavior. So 10100 communication speed, and the green one comes on next to it, solid, which tells me that the PoE is connected, or is functional. Okay, so a little information here on what PoE Plus is. This is a PoE Plus switch. Your specifications, or your standards, are 802.3 AF and 802.3 AT. What that means is your AF specification means you've got roughly 15 watts over Cat5 cables per port. So this is a 60 watt budget. That means I've got 60 watts to share amongst these 4 ports. So you've got roughly 15 watts per port if you balance the load. So I can have 4 devices that are 15 watts. Well, what happens if I have a device that's 20 watts or 25 watts? Because this is a PoE Plus, which means it does meet the 802.3 AT spec, which means you can go up to 30 watts over Cat5 cables. That translates to about 25.5 watts usable to the devices. There are some losses. So I can't have 25, 25, 25, 25. That adds up to 100. But I can have a 25 watt and a 25 watt device here and here. And that just means I really don't have much available on these other 2 ports for PoE devices. I'm going to hit the PoE max over here. So just keep that in mind. You need to balance your load. Make sure you know what sort of power that your devices require, and then choose the appropriate switch. Okay, next I'll pop up this little slide, and we'll talk about what these dip switches do. Okay, so the 4 switches are in the default off position, which is down. And number one switch is right here on the left, this one right here. It controls port 1 and port 2. And in the down position, which is off, these operate as gigabit ports with your PoE Plus functionality. Now, when I move this switch up, and I learned something here just a moment ago, make sure that's up, okay. So when it's up, that switches the function of these 2 ports, 1 and 2, to long-range PoE Plus up to 200 meters, which is about 650 feet, but it drops the speed. These are no longer gigabit ports, they drop down to 10 megabits a second. So that's your trade-off. I can go much further with my power over Ethernet, but my speed drops. And as I discussed earlier, your cameras here, they don't necessarily need that real high-speed connection, so it works out. But you'll see nothing's changed here in the function of the LEDs. I changed the switch. What you have to do is power this down, and when you power it back up, then the switch position takes effect. Took me a moment to figure that out. Now you'll notice this was green a moment ago because it was gigabit. Well, now this gigabit connection has been reduced to 10 megabits a second, and we've got the orange or sort of a yellow flashing LED. Of course, this one was already yellow or orange because, again, it's a camera and it doesn't need those speeds. So if we move on to switch number 2, right here, it controls ports 3 and 4 in the same manner that 1 and 2 are controlled. So in the down position, these are gigabit ports, and in the up position, move that up, all right. And then I cycle the power and turn it back on. Now all 4 of these ports are in the long range mode, but their speed has dropped. So we'll go ahead and move, let's see, the black one here, this goes to my computer, no PoE capability, so we should connect here at the slower speed, and we do right there. We're at the orange. And if I turn this off and I flip, actually I'll need to flip the second one, but I flip both of them. When I turn it back on, this should switch back to green. Give it a moment, and it switches back to green. So that shows the functionality of those first two dip switches. Okay, 3 and 4. So 3 controls your VLAN port isolation. So in the bottom position or down or off, it's the isolation, VLAN port isolation is disabled. When we put that in the up position, your ports are, the port isolation is enabled. And I think we have to cycle the power to the switch again for that to take effect. Turn it back on. Not real sure what we'll see here, any difference in the, no, you don't see any difference in the functionality. And then moving over here to dip switch number 4, this is your QoS or quality of service. You can enable it or disable it. Of course, that's for all your ports or the entire switch. So when it's down, it is disabled. When it's on or up, it is enabled, and that basically means QoS is enabled and your video and voice data are prioritized. They're given higher priority. So we'll turn this off and turn it back on, and everything comes back online. Now let me back up a little bit here. Switch number 3, the dip switch 3 here, this is the one for your port isolation. So if you're not sure what port isolation is or what it's used for, basically in a VLAN or a virtual local area network, it's all about control. It's all about making sure that this port can't see what's going on these other ports. So when the ports are isolated, what's happening on port 1, the data can't be shared or seen with the other ports, and the same goes for any one of these ports. There are many examples. These are often used, or virtual local area networks are set up in offices, hospitals, hotels, things like that. So let's just say this was used in a hotel. So each one of these ports is going to a different room, and usually these switches would be huge with many ports. But when your port isolation is set up, what's happening to room number 1, what's going on with the devices there, that can't be seen by the people in the other rooms. So the people in room number 2, 3, 4, all of their information that's traveling to this port or through this port can't be seen or shared with the other ports or the other rooms. So it's really a part of privacy and controlling what's happening with your information, because in a normal dumb switch that doesn't have any port isolation, your information for each port, it's basically broadcast to everything that's on the other ports, and it can be seen or shared with it. So that's really what it's about. Again, you can do a Google search on VLANs and port isolation for more information, but that's just sort of a basic description. So really the takeaway on a PoE switch is you need to make sure that you don't try to draw more power through it than what the switch is rated. Of course, it'll let you know with the little overcurrent light there, or the little PoE max light. Warmth, sometimes these things can get fairly warm. This is just lukewarm right now, and I only have 2 PoE devices plugged into it. I've been running it all day yesterday and overnight and all day today. And like I said, if I had 4 PoE devices, it might be a little warmer, but I just have the 2. As far as moving data through it, I've been trying to move data back and forth just to see if there are any issues, and there aren't. Of course, just moving data through it doesn't generate that much heat. It's the PoE devices that draw the power through it that create the heat. So what do I like about this switch? Well, I like the fact that it has a metal case, metal frame, so it's going to be pretty robust. I like the fact that we have the ability to extend the PoE range up to 200 meters. Of course, your sacrifice there is a little slower communication speed, but again, your cameras and most devices don't require the extreme speed. Also, the ability to isolate your ports is also nice, although I don't know if I would personally use it that much, but it is a nice feature to have. So this switch right now on the TrendNET website lists for $82.49, I believe. I looked around on Amazon and I didn't see it yet, so it may not just be released. So the list price, usually, you know, things come down a little bit or they have sales, so keep your eye out. I think that's a decent price for a PoE switch, a 60 watt budget PoE switch like this. So I would give this the Overclockers Club Gold Award. This is Chris with Overclockers Club. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.